Lenin Ablat Gemara. We are up to Daf Gimel Amar Aleph in the Gemara here. So just a quick synopsis of what we did so far. We have an argument between Rabbah and Rabbah. So the following law. The law is when somebody brings a get from overseas to Israel, they have to testify that they saw it actually being written and they saw it being signed, sealed, and and now they're delivering it. And the Gemara wants to know why it's important for them to make such a declaration. So according to Rabbah, it is because we are concerned that it was not written lishma, not written having the right thoughts in mind. And according to Rabbah, the reason is because if you ain't aidim between the kaimoi, what happens to if they come from overseas and somebody then questions the validity of the get, especially the husband, if he changes his mind, there's no way to prove the veracity of the get because the people, nobody recognizes the signatures. So we have this aid, and we give this aid the credibility of two aidim. So we are up to now of Gimel Amar Aleph, and we're querying now, why are they arguing? Why don't they agree with each other? What's causing Rabbah to believe that the main reason is the Shema, and what's causing Rabbah to believe the main reason is it's the witnesses? Ain't aidim between the kindness. So that Gimel Amar Aleph, right in towards the bottom of the page. The first word of the lines for Rabbah, about 20 lines from the bottom of the page, and that is the Rabbah my time Allah Amakarabah. Why doesn't Rabbah, a student of Rabbah, agree with Rabbah that we need Lishma? And we're worried that it wasn't written Lishma because we already explained that even though the majority of the Seifrim, do the right thing, but there are some Seifrim who either practice and then they'll use those things that they practice, like Tosfos learns or like Rashi learns. We are worried that they found an existing get that somebody wrote and decided to dispose of and not use it, and that's what you want to use. And the chances of that are slim, but nevertheless we're machmir. That's what we are concerned with. So why does Rabbah not agree with Rabbah? Rabbah, very simple. If Rabbah is correct, then really what the person should be saying is b'fanai nechtav lishma. What do we want to know? Whether written lishma or not. And the way Rashi learned, I like to tell you, Rashi learned that this person said b'fanai nechtav, then we ask him, we tease out of it, and what did you see? Was it lishma or not? If really the primary purpose is to say lishma, then say b'fanai nechtav lishma. B'fanai nechtam lishma. Now we say two clauses here. B'fanai nechtam lishma is like one testimony, and b'fanai nechtav, I also saw signed lishma is a second testimony, which means that this opinion holds that you need two lishmas here, which we'll discuss soon. Anyway, Amalach, he says, "Mik tani b'fanai nechtam lishma, b'fanai nechtam lishma." If my teacher Rabbah is correct, then he should have added the word lishma. And Rabbah says a very interesting thing. When you talk about how short a person's attention span is, it's even worse when it comes to memory. How bad is a person's memory? It is so poor that people can remember two words, not three. That's why we say Shalom Aleichem, no more than that. Two words we can remember. If you had to say something else after Shalom Aleichem, we'd be finished. So he said this, Rabba, you're right, we should say that. If you add another word, you're not going to say it. So what's the big deal? So don't say it. And then we'll ask, if you forget to say it, we'll ask you, was it Lishma? What's the problem? The problem is if we make a law that says that this is what you have to say, and you don't say it properly, it's is possible. And Rameir is the one who advocates that, and we're going to learn Rameir is the one who holds that you need to write Lishma. So Rameir would say that if we made a takana, this is how it should be. Then it'll lose the whole thing. So by saying b'fanai nechtav, and Rashi here concludes in one shot, that you don't actually even have to ask him any more Lishma. Because the person will realize why I bring documents, money documents, and other things. I never have to say about that. Why here? Obviously, there's a law exists here, doesn't exist anywhere else. You need lishma. So it's obvious that's what he's trying to say. So Shigmon has a question. Hashanam Yasram Exayu. So also forget. You say before next time you'll forget. No. Three words is too much to handle. Two words we can. There's more than two words, but it's two separate phrases. So each one has its own din. What's this idea that point out three words you forget? I have no idea. Where's that come from? Anyway, that's how it is. Says but further, okay, so we understand why Rabbah doesn't agree with Rabbah. But Rabbah, my time, why doesn't Rabbah then agree with Rabbah that the reason is we need to authenticate this star, or that in the future is to prevent in the future anybody, especially the husband, coming to claim that it's fraudulent. Again, the wording in Cain, Rabbah says very simple. If it's all about the Eidim, then why talk about the B'fanai nechtav? What's the relevance of whether it was written? All you need to know is the B'fanai nechtam. I saw these witnesses sign, and I saw two witnesses sign the document. That's it. Of course. Yeah, 100%. What if they don't do the Shema? According to the Rabbi, we're not worried about the Shema. They all do the right thing. It's only a question of the husband coming forward and saying it's a fraudulent get. So if that's all we're worried about is these witnesses, where the real, all he has to say, I saw like any Kim stars. How do you Makayim a star? They don't say we know what's written, the contents. That's all it is. In Cain, why add anything else? So the Gemara, before Nechlamali, what do you have to have before Nechtav? Shema mina bin l'shema. Obviously, this is a unique thing to say. I saw it written. The only possible reason why you saw it written is because of l'shema. Says the Gemara, it's an excellent question. What's the Rav going to answer? The Rav, you're right. Bedinu the lisna hachi. Really, you should say only before Nechtam. But we are worried that people are going to start making a mistake. That is as follows. If all he says is before Nechtam and everybody sees that a single witness comes, says it's a valid get, and we usually get, we rely on it. So they'll think that in all stars, if there's ever a question about the validity of a star, all you need is a single witness. And that's wrong. You always need two witnesses. So therefore, we're worried. If you think that this get is no different than any other star, and you see how we behave over here, you'll think all stars will have this leniency as well. The Alma Beid Echad. The Rabbi. The only reason why. No. So Rabbi says, no, we're not interested in Lishma. Our only concern is the aid. You want to know why we added the words Befana and Nechtav is only so that the aid will realize that everyone will realize that this is different than all. This is a unique case, different than all other studies, because no other study you have to talk about the writing. You have to watch the Sefer, write the loan contract, not at all. So you'll know that's different, then you're not going to start drawing parallels. No, it's a good answer that Rabbi gives now. So why doesn't Rabbi give the Rabbi? Rabbi says if that's the only reason, people anyway would know that a get is different for three reasons. Number one, but Rabbi Midami. First of all, Hasam over there, Yad Inan Hacha B'Fanei. All other studies enough to say I'm familiar with this, with this. I recognize these signatures. Over here by get, you have to the shliach who brings the get has to say B'Fanei. I saw it. Now, what exactly means Yadina? And so Rashi learns, even though it's written in plural, and we're talking about a single aid here, Yadina means, the aid in the Alma, Shluchim the Alma, the world. But really, Rashi says it's enough to say Yodaiti. It's enough to say that I know. Patesis doesn't read that at all, because it comes out according to Rashi, even though you say Befonai, Sorry, before we get to that. So three things. First of all, by get, you have to say Befonai. All other studies you say Yodaiti. I recognize. So right away you know there's a difference. Number one. Then two other differences which is not readily there, but if you know some of the laws, you readily know. For example, you cannot use a woman as a witness to authenticate a star. A woman can bring a get. In fact, the wife herself could bring the get. She could be the shlich to bring the get that she said before nechtam. And the same token, the person who benefits from that document can't be the one to authenticate it. But the woman who's the one who's going to be the beneficiary of this get can say, my husband gave me the get to be a shlich to bring it to the bezin, and it should take effect over here. So she's the beneficiary, and we believe her. And she's a woman, we believe her. So right away you know that this get is different than everything else. So then what's Rabba's argument? So go back to the question. So why do you have to add the Pani Nechtav? Doesn't that prove Rabba's right? It's to tell us about the Shema. No. Rabba says that people won't readily know that there's a difference. You know why? What happens even here if you say Yodaiti by a get? Won't it work? And this is how Rashi learns. That you don't have to say B'Fanai Nechtav. Even though it says Yadinon, plural, he meant Yodaiti. If this shliach would say, not that I saw these Eidim sign, but Yodaiti, I know, I recognize these signatures, that's good enough. So there's no difference. Either two other differences, that people are not familiar with unless you see a woman there. But if you don't see a woman there, an ordinary person brings it, you don't know that a woman's permitted, that the wife can bring it, right? It's a chiddush. And you yourself are saying over here, what do you call it? You know that your daiti works, and you're saying over here before the nechtam, maybe we'll work in no starters. That's why you have to add before the nechtam. Taish totally disagrees. He says over here that why does the Mishnah say you have to say before nine nechtam? Just say before nine nechtam. Say your daiti. Chasimas Eidim. Why say before nine? When before nine is very limiting. If the law is you only have to say before nine. Before nine means only if you saw. But you tell me the halacha don't even have to see, according to Rabbi, as long as you're familiar with the signature. So why would the Mishnah limit the scope of who you can use as a shliach when the thing you connect, the whole idea is igunim, but trying to make things easy for it to be divorced, and you're limiting it. So therefore, the Taisus argues. He says no. Your din means that if two witnesses would have come forward and they say there's no shliach here, no, but the shliach didn't see the thing. But if two witnesses come forward and say, yeah, we recognize signatures, we would accept the get. So that makes it no different than all other starters. So therefore, that's enough for people to make a mistake, and we have to add the fun in after. Okay, so you want further? This is an amazing Gemara because you don't have this really anywhere else. You have it in Pesachim for the first page. Here you can have it for a few pages. The Gemara goes under a certain supposition that Rabba and Rabba are arguing, and we're going to work our way through why he's arguing. The ending conclusion is that Rabba agrees with Rabba. He just adds another layer. Rabba also said you need kiyum of the Eidim, but I'm also adding Lishma. And then the differences between the two suddenly narrow. We have three differences, it becomes much less. Anyway, let's get this. So, but this is how the Gemara goes under misapprehension for a while. It says the Gemara, back to the bottom page. Okay, so now Rabba says, you say, if it's Lishma, who said you need Chasim Lishma? The Eidim have to sign when they know that when they sign, they have to know which woman it's for. They just have to know that a Sefer wrote a get and they sign. Yes, we saw the Sefer, right? They get, it's a kosher get. They don't have to know which woman it is, which man it is. They're just authenticating the document. Who is this Tana that holds you need both? Now, remember I told you in the introduction, we have Rameh and Rabbi Lazar. According to Rameh, when the Torah says the kosav law lishma, the kosav is referring to the signature of the witnesses. It's the signature of the witnesses that have to be done lishma because he holds eide chasima karsi. Who are the ones that actually make it validate the get? It's the eidim who sign. Rabbi Lazar says no. I mean, according to Rameh, you don't have to write lishma. It's only the eidim sign have to be lishma. So you only chasim lishma. Rabbi Lazar holds no. It's the Eidim Masida, the Eidim who witness the transfer of the get. They're the ones who make the get happen. So what it means in terms of the cost of law? Literally, the cost of law. When you write the get, no, the law holds it's ksiva that has to be lishma. So there's a problem. The Mishnah says you have to say before nechtav for nechtav. Who's author? Rameir, only the nechtav should be lishma. According to Rabbi Lazar, only the nechtav should be lishma. Who holds you need both? That's the discussion now. Says the Gemara, you don't need to write the lishma. How do I know that? It's not. We learned. We have other dinner. Remember, besides the dinner of Lishma, we have a din, for example, the chubas that'll be attached. You're not allowed to consider the kosav the nasan. There should be only two steps. You write, you give. But if it's the kosav, the kotzat the nasan, if you write and then you have to cut it off and then give, it's no good. So the same like Yishma, these are din that relate to a get. So according to Rab Meir, the writing is not the important part. The most important part is the signing. But the kosav and all these dinim is referring to the signing of the. So according to Rab Meir, if you wrote the get when it's attached, and then you cut it off, and the Eidim, as long as when the Eidim signed, it was done correctly, it's a valid get. So the same thing is when it comes to Lishma. It's only Chsim. That's what it proves. Now we learned, ain't place in the Mechul Kaka, you're not allowed to write a get when it's attached to the ground. Cost while Mechul Kaka, if he did, you wrote it when it's attached. Then Tosha, then you cut it off. And then Chasma, you signed it, but they gave it to Kasha, it's Kasha. Why? Go over care about the Chsim. No. So it can't be the Meir Mishnah. Why say before Nechtam Lishma? Who cares? No, boss. Rabbi Lazar. But Rabbi Lazar, you don't need to sign. How do I know that? So let's work our way through. We're going to go through Rabbi Lazar. Maybe Mahatoida, this is what you need. But the Rabbanan made a second requirement. According to Meir, maybe the Rabbanan required that they should write Lishma. And according to Rabbi Lazar, maybe the Rabbanan required that you should sign Lishma. Says the Gemara, you're going to ask me, Rabbi Lazar. But maybe Mahatoida, you don't have to sign Lishma. Maybe the Rabbanan boy, maybe the author of Amritsha is Rabbi Lazar, and Mahatoida, this is Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan, you have to say Chsiman. That's why we say before nechta. Once you're already saying it, say the whole thing. So the Gemara says, it can be because of Shloisha Gittin Psulin, the Rabbanan, there are three Gittin that are possible, which are only possible with the Rabbanan, and Harim is only possible with the Rabbanan because b'diavad if you use these possible Gittin according to the Tanna Kama, it's still a valid get. That means that her children she remarried, the children not mamzeded, so it's only the Rabbanan. Anything Mahatoida is disqualified if she married, she's a married woman, so it's only the Rabbanan. And Rabbi Lazar holds that even that you don't need. Which Rabbi Lazar holds that even the Rabbanan, we don't care. What's the cases here? Well, Shloisha Gittin Psulin, the Rabbanan, there are three cases of Gittin Psulin, the Rabbanan. Rabbi Lazar is not required to sign the Shema. Now we learned, three get in the apostle. The Im Nisa, but if you marry based on those apostle get in the Vlad Kosher. Number one, Kosa Biksav Yoda, the husband wrote the get himself, the ain't Olav Aiden. The husband wrote the get, but there's no agent. So it's like he But because he wrote it, how's he going to come tomorrow and say it's not a valid get? The sefer is only a shliach of the husband. But the husband on himself is better. He's not. I'm saying it. So it's a valid get. The Rabbanan don't say it's not a valid get. And what's the psul? What exactly is the psul? The Taisha says the psul is there's no zman. As we can see in a minute, we're going to learn that Zayin. Very important to have a date in the get. Why you need a date in the get? Is it because what happened? You married to your niece, even though you got into a big fight with her. If she was Mazana, you're going to backdate the get to defend her. Say, oh, she was a single woman already, even though you only gave her the get yesterday, and she was Mazana 2 weeks ago with Adim and everything else. He'll say, oh, I gave it to her a month ago. She was a free woman, even though he hates her. But it's his niece. He has Achmanis. He's going to have Achmanis, and that's why you need a date. The other one that says you need a date is otherwise she's going to collect the silver. You're going to make a deal with her. You're going to backdate it so any properties that you sold, in the interim, you can take it back. So you're going to, you're not going to write a date. So she'll say, oh, I was about 2 years already, and the property you bought last year. I had my rights. I had a lien on the property first. That's the reason. And therefore, if he writes the thing himself, he can put any date he wants. As if there's no date. That's the problem with it. That's the problem. And the Teish said, "What's the big deal?" So Teish has a question. So why? So what's? Don't say the get is possible. Say just you get is valid. No, according to the valid get. Yeah, but there's no witnesses. Who knows what date he wrote on it? So let him write the get and just say you cannot collect from the kuchas. That's the only worry, according to one that says that he should pay it. If that's your only worry, then just say that this such a get that he wrote. It's a valid get. She can get remarried, which is the most important thing. Okay, she cannot collect the silver. But he's that. So Teish says, "Fakert." We're worried that if she was let's say Tishkaka free woman, the husband can then say, "I gave it to her afterwards." No, it's a free woman. She got married, and he's going to start causing all kinds of trouble and saying, "Oh, yeah, you weren't divorced yet at the time." If you really hated her, you can make her life very difficult. Exactly. Okay, that's din number one. Din number two. Yes, all of Eidim and Mizman. There's no date, so same idea. And the third one is Yesh Beizman the Ein Be'Le'edach. There's no Zman, but there is only one. There's only one there, and the Sefer who wrote it as well. Only one Eidah. But I mean, not about kosher, but if she married with this get, it's kosher, which means that's only with the Rabban. Comes look, Rabbi Lazar says, Afa Pisha Ein Olav Eidim. Even there's no edim at all, it's kosher. Now, the raya is from these words, as Teresa says, Afa Pisha Ein Lo Edim. There's nobody signed on this. It's still kosher. Why? And why is it now? Rabbi Meir is talking lechatchila, right? But everything's kosher. So if Rabbi Lazar is arguing, that means he's arguing in the lechatchila. I hold that even lechatchila. Forget about one day. I hold that if there's no edim at all, the get is kosher. Why is it get kosher? Because we don't care about chesima, even with the Rabbanan. So Rabbi Lazar holds that even the Rabbanon we don't need. Why would if the author of our mission is Rabbi Lazar? Why would you say before that nechtam lishma? But even the Rabbanon you don't require. And the Gleiben Chasim, you can collect the Chasim Shabbatim. Why can you collect the Chasim Shabbatim? No witness at all. She'ena Eidin Chayis will get. You know why I have Eidin signing a get? Only that in case tomorrow anybody raises questions, we have a document to prove that it once happened. Not that these people make. This is more like a raya. Just evidence that she was divorced. It's not a requirement. Not a requirement. They don't really do anything for the get. It just that tells us, probably it will happen. She's telling us the truth. It's more as a raya. When it says that Gleivel Chas Shabbat, Rashi has one opinion, doesn't only mean here Ksuba collecting his wife. It's talking about all status, alone and everything else, which means Rabbi Lazar holds that in all status, Eidim is Sira Karsa, not just by Gittin. Okay, well, Rab Meir. So why can we say also Mishnah Meir? Rab Meir holds Chsiv Lishma Mahatayda, but Ksiv Lishma is with Rabban. That's what Rab Meir. The Chila better make Ksiv Lishma, but the Reis is with Rabban boy. So but it can be. We know Rab Meir holds that even with Rabbanon, we don't need Ksiv Lishma. How do I know that? Because Rab Nachman Rab Meir used to say, I feel much of Ashba. If you found a get written in and you found it out in the dump it, and that gets written with your wife's name. No, it's not written in Lishma for her and for you. It doesn't matter. But you signed it correctly. You got two witnesses and you signed them and you told them I'm using it for my wife. The Nasla gave it to kosher. It's kosher. So we see the mark that even with the Rabbanon you don't need Ksiva Lishma. How do you know? Maybe the Chitayman that Isaac was. This is talking about in theory, academically. This is the Hatayda, but the Rabbanan you shouldn't use it. If so, then the language is wrong. Instead of saying Omer Hayr Meir used to say, he should have said Dvatayda Mebayle. He should have said I made hold that Dvatayda. This would be good, but you can't. So who is the author of our Mishnah? So the Gemara gives a few answers. Answer number one: Elam Rabbi Lazi. The author of our Mishnah is Rabbi Elazar. The chi loy boy Rabbi Elazar chasima. When does Rabbi Elazar say you don't need to sign heichad leked cloud? When do you say you don't need to sign when there are no witnesses at all? Right? No witnesses at all. It's a kosher thing. I don't need any chasima. But if you already have Eidim, make sure they do it right. Why do we say that? In other words, all the proofs you brought me was that even if you have no witnesses signed on the get, as long as you have witnesses who saw the transfer of the get, that's good enough. You're right. But if you already have witnesses on the get, they have to do it correctly lishma. So therefore, why? Because there's a concept called mezuyah b'teicha. Mezuyah b'teicha is if you don't need witnesses on the document, the loan document. You have Eidim Shira. But if you have witnesses and one of them is a apostle, it ruins the whole document. Because you don't have it at all. Having it that's apostle is worse than not having it at all.
If you don't have a full
okay, yeah. Exactly. Apostle. Okay, good analogy. When do you say we don't care about we ignore the chasima when you have no witness at all? Then boy, you need it done correctly. I don't know. But if the document itself has witnesses that are mezuyim metaycha, that is false as possible. Tesis has a hard time understanding. How do you comparing lishma to false witnesses? Apostle witness or else. There's a psula witnesses. So it makes sense. We don't want you to rely on these witnesses again, the apostle witnesses. But if the witnesses are all kosher, they didn't sign lishma, so you don't need lishma. So what's the mezuyah metaycha here? What possible outcome can there be that there might be a problem? And to avoid that, we said we don't want that. So what's the problem there? So he said like this, we're worried that when it comes to the witnesses, you don't have them signing lishma, then there's a good chance that when it comes to the writing, you also wouldn't do lishma. If you're already remember, you write before you sign. If you're already in that train of mind that, you got to write lishma, then naturally you would also ask the witness to write lishma. But if you don't ask the witness to write lishma, it tells us there's a good chance you probably didn't write the get lishma either, because you don't realize that you have to have lishma. And that's what we worry about. Okay, so we say it's Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Ashi comes along and says, Hamani Rabbi Yehuda. The author of our Mishnah is? It's actually Rabbi Yehuda. There's a third opinion that holds that you need ksiva lishma and kasim lishma. Who's that Rabbi Yehuda? Which Rabbi Yehuda? It's not we learn Rabbi Yehuda Paisel. Rabbi Yehuda says that is possible. I should take sivasa the chasimasi betol. She's not talking about lishma. He's talking about the other din. For example, it has to be disconnected, cut off. It has to be cut off already. And Rabbi Yehuda says that not like Rabbi Meir before. He said that if you signed it, as long as you signed it correctly, it's good. No, he says it has to be written, and it has to be signed, cut off. Now, if it's written cut off, of course it's signed cut off. Why even mention signing cut off? So as if to say that even though the poil in practice it's impossible to be written cut off and then signed cut off. So some of the say it is possible because you wrote it when it's cut off and then you plant it in the ground. But we can also say that he's trying to highlight that both of them are all the dinim of get apply to sai kasiva and applies to chsim as well. So the shema, when it comes to talish, it's not really irrelevant, but when it comes to shema, it is. Says Gemara, such an obvious answer. He made caught in my time. So why tack it in? What's this whole pilpul we had for a page and a half, and you have to have all these tastes in the Rishonim? You could have just told us straight out. It's so obvious. Rabbi Yehuda holds unique simach. Why would you first try Sameya, then you try Rabbi Elazar? First, an interesting thing. First, Mahadin Rameya, we tried to establish the Mishnah, author of Mishnah Rameya, the Stam Masnisa Rameya. We have a rule that a Stam Mishnah is Rameya. And because we have a rule that a Stam Mishnah is Rameya, we thought if we could somehow or another have Rameya, the author of our Mishnah, it would be most appropriate. Then it didn't work. Mahadin Rabbi Elazar, why did we try to do Rabbi Elazar? Because Kaimlan, now our Gemara clearly says here the halacha is like a Rabbi Elazar begittin, as if to say, but everywhere else, the halacha is like a Eidim Shira, not important. Meir is not Shabboti. Meir is not Shabboti, but generally we don't say Shabboti. Meir is too smart for us, all the way around. Even if you gimel, we say that the halacha is generally Meir because he was so superior to all the Chachamim, they couldn't really fully appreciate what he was saying. And that was his Maila was his son. So there's a big machlek in the Shaimer. So according to Rabbi Tam, Rabbi Elazar, even though the Gemara says Gittin, he brings an eye from other places. Allah like Elazar in all cases. But the big machlek is in Shainim. So according to Rabbi Elazar, what's the bottom line? Do you need Eidich Chesima or don't you? The Rif Paskins, according to Rabbi Elazar, it's as if it says also Eidim Mesida Karsi. In other words, according to Rabbi Lazar, if you only have Eidim Chsima, it's good enough. And but also Eidim Mesida Karsi. According to Traces, no. According to Rabbi Lazar, only Eidim Mesida Karsi. You don't need Eidim at all. And even if you do have Eidim, it doesn't help. You need the Eidim Mesida. And Rabbi Tam Liba says you must make sure every get you have 2 Eidim Mesida there, because even according to Rabbi Lazar, and only Eidim Mesida Karsi. The Ran has the third opinion. The Ran is interesting. The Ran says only Eidim Mesira Karsi. But if you don't have Eidim Mesira, but you have witnesses that signed, then the witnesses that signed, they're not called Eidim Chsima. They become the Eidim Mesira, because tomorrow you find it in her hand. How to get to her hand? Obviously, the husband gave it to her, and it's an authentic shtar. Now, we say also, even according to a mayor holds Eidim Chsima Karsi, you also need Eidim Mesira. Rabbeinu Tam says, why do you need Eidim Mesira? Because ain't Dover Shebe'erva Pachel Shnayim. Writing the get is not the Dover Shebe'erva. The Dover Shebe'erva is severing the ties between the husband and the wife. Where's the Eidim Mesida? So Rabbeinu Tam holds, not like the Rana just said that Eidim Mesida become Eidim Mesida. Rabbeinu Tam Paskins, even according to Rameya, you need Eidim Mesida. Then there's a question: does this apply to all dinim mominus as well? And here we have the famous shitta of Rabbeinu Tam concluding cases. Here is a difference: the role of the Eidim play by get and the role of the Eidim play everywhere else. By a get, the Eidim make it happen. Everywhere else, the Eidim are there to prove that it happened. And because by a get, the Eidim make it happen, and Rabbi Lazar says, which Eidim is it? It's the Eidim Mesida. So you need, it's a requirement. You don't have Eidim Mesida, it doesn't work. All other things, the Eidim are not there to make it happen. They just prove it happened. How do I know that? For example, if a man admits that he owes another person, if a person admits, I owe another person $100, and the story, but if we'll see if a man and a woman come into a business and say we're both married, means nothing to us. If there were no witnesses there, nothing happened. Why? Because when you're hurting other people, then you have, where do you have the koyach to harm other people? You need the Eidim. The Eidim are the ones who make it happen. So there's difference in Eid Kiyum and Eid Raya. So Eid Kiyum, you need Eidim Mesida, but all other things, if you don't have Eidim Mesida and you only have Chsima, it's only as a Raya, it's good enough. And tomorrow night,